Good morning. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. This morning I think we'll talk about personal responsibility, our ever-changing, rapidly changing world, and your ability and or willingness to adapt or not. How's that? How do I start? About 10-ish years ago, I was working for the federal government, cubicle land, and I walked down. I was a retired Special Forces guy, so I had the big dark beard at the time, and people kind of looked at me like, because government workers back then, there weren't a lot of us with beards. I was different then too. I walked down to the bullpen. It was a place where there were about, 6 Army majors that worked, maybe 4, about 6, working in one room. And I said, hey guys, I need some help with my computer. My wife wants me to buy these tickets that go on sale at 1 o'clock today, concert tickets for her and my daughter. And I can't figure out how to work the site and pay and blah, blah. And the guys are all like, oh, what do they want to go see? And I said, Lady Gaga. And they kind of looked at each other. And the one guy said, you're a pastor, aren't you? And I said, yeah, is that a problem? Because not everybody knew I was a pastor. And he goes, and you're going to let your daughter go see Lady Gaga? I said, yeah, is that a problem? He goes, have you ever seen a Lady Gaga video? I said, no. The guy said, well, why don't you go down and watch a couple Lady Gaga videos, and then if you still need help buying tickets, come on down and we'll help you. I said, all right. So I went down to my cubicle and I fired up YouTube and I watched a couple Lady Gaga videos, and it's like, oh, heck no, my daughter ain't going to see that. Are you kidding me? And so then when I go home, because that my wife and daughter both told me, you got to get those tickets first thing because they'll sell out in a couple hours. So I go home and I've got to be the bad guy, right? Did you get the tickets? No. I told you you had to do it right away or you wouldn't get them. I said, no, I purposely didn't buy the tickets. And then I had to explain why, that Lady Gaga was wildly inappropriate for, a prepubescent girl to go see. And my wife was a little irritated with me. And I told her, go watch some Lady Gaga videos upstairs. And then she told me I made the right decision after she did. But, then the next day my daughter goes to school and all her friends have their tickets because their parents are good, caring, loving parents who bought them the tickets to Lady Gaga. Oh, and by the way, my wife was going to be like the chaperone for like 5 or 6 little girls. And so, now that ain't happening. So there was drama, in middle school or whatever. And, my daughter comes home and she was unhappy with her daddy. That's why I get paid the big bucks as a father, right? I'm not here to be your friend or to be, make you happy all the time. I'm here to raise you to adulthood successfully. But yeah, that was hard. What father doesn't like giving his child good things, right? What father doesn't like seeing delight in his child's eyes? But I tell you what, some things that delight children aren't worthy of children. And as a father, as a mother, you have to say, no, I don't care what everybody else is doing. Or as my father used to say, if everybody else jumps off a cliff, are you going to do it too? So it's a hard decision. I didn't know who Lady Gaga was. I didn't know who this singer for Manchester Stadium, right? The terrorist incident, wasn't no accident. The terrorist incident that just happened in England, Manchester, yesterday. I didn't know who she was. Never heard of her. And 20-some people were killed, mostly young people, probably kids. It's one of those pop idols that, all the kids go to see. And so guess what? I checked her out today on YouTube. Her video, What kind of parent would let your pubescent kid go see that woman's stuff? Are you out of your ever-loving mind? I don't remember her name. It's really not important. But if you care, you can find it. You can go watch a YouTube video or two. You're letting your little kids go see that crap? Are you kidding me? People have lost their minds. I don't think anybody deserved to be injured or killed at that venue. But you know what? If parents had said, no, my kid's not going to that, their kid wouldn't have been hurt at that thing. People need to pay attention to what's going on. You know, we fight not against flesh and blood, right? We're fighting against forces of evil. And they really are out there. And we need to be aware of what's going on. And they take many forms. You know, my opinion, Pastor Joe, that concert was in and of itself evil. The terrorist act that was perpetrated therein was also evil. There'll probably be some evil resulting from that. It's all bad. Which leads me to this. You know, our world is changing rapidly. And it's probably not going back the way it was. And people can either wish it weren't so, try to force it to go back to the way it was, or catch the wave. And you're sitting on top of the world. Catch the wave and ride it. You know, guide your surfboard to where you want it to go. Because if not, that wave's going to eat you. The dinosaurs probably said coulda, shoulda, woulda. You know, all they wanted to. It didn't help them any. You know, the change is a-coming. And our society, world society, is changing. You are going to see more terrorist events with more rapidity and violence coming up. Whether those are real terrorists, and most of them are, or whether those are people pretending they are terrorists, you know, false flag type things, and that's a reality too. But most terrorist events are terrorist events. You're going to see more of them. And then you're going to see response to those terrorist events, and then that's going to affect people like you and me. You know, there are some places where you're not allowed to wear a hoodie because, you know, people hide guns under them, or it's thug culture or something like that. Whatever, man. I wear a hoodie because I have a bald head and I can do this sometimes, right? And I can look like the monk. Change is coming, and too many people are refusing to see it. People say things like, I'm not going to let fear of a terrorist event rule my life. I'm going to the 4th of July fireworks expo on the mall in D.C. anyway. Chances are great nothing will happen there. But terrorists aren't attacking people out in the middle of nowhere. Terrorists aren't attacking people in the country. They're not. And I submit to you that if they do, they'll do it in something like you know, a county fair or something where there's a crowd of people, because they want bang for the buck. You know, if they're going to go to Allah and meet their 72 Virginians, they want it to count. And so they want a lot of people. And so they go where the people are. When you hunt deer, you don't run around the woods hoping to bump into a deer. You go to a place where you know all the deer are and you wait for them to come out. Same thing with terrorists. They go where the people are. They like to go where the unarmed people are. How come there's never been a mass shooting at a gun show? You ever think about that? Of course you have. And so I'm just, once again, avoid crowds, you know. And then when this thing escalates to the point where the big boys are throwing big things at each other, they're not going to throw them out here. They're going to throw them on towns and suburbs and cities and places like that. And you don't want to be there. But you're trying to cling on to life as you thought it was and as you want it to be, and so you're chasing the almighty dollar so that you can buy your new Saab Turbo, and your kid needs some new Vans because all the other kids have Vans, and that those things aren't cheap, and so I got to work here. Choices have consequences, and a lot of people are choosing badly. A lot of people fail to see what's here. It's at the door. And they're just like, nah, I can't see you. Instead of taking your kid to some concert, or worse, letting your kid go by themselves, instead of going to the big mob of people event somewhere, why don't you take your son fishing or your daughter hunting? Why don't you get out on a lake somewhere in a little boat and just paddle it around? Bzz, bloop. They'll remember those times, the time they spent with you doing the quiet things, better than they'll remember some noisy, crowded, sweaty, drug-infested concert somewhere. It's all about time, spending time with your kids, spending time with your peeps. I've been thinking about this technology thing. It's a means to an end, but I've been also thinking, even out here it's controlling my life a little bit too much. I'm checking my phone a little bit too much during the day. I'm finding myself getting sucked into emails with people, quite frankly, I don't know. And I'm about to come up with my own discipline on that. Change that up a little bit, where, I only look at my phone about 3 times a day, probably. Morning while I'm having my coffee, lunch, and then maybe after dinner for a little bit. That's probably it. I got life to live. And yeah, events are going to happen, and I won't be right on. I might not find out for 4 or 5 hours. But the reality is those events don't really affect me at all. And I wish for you that they didn't affect you. Yes, I do. Society's changing. The world society is changing. There are moves afoot. And assuming that things are always going to be like they were, or worse, that they're going to go back to the way they were, assuming they're always going to be like they are, or that they're going to go back to the way they were, that's not cutting it. You need to get with the program and figure out, it's like the movies, right? We're out in the jungle, we're doing something, and all of a sudden all these birds start flying. All different kinds of birds are all going that way. And then the next thing you know, animals are going that way. And of course the actors are always like, I wonder what's going on. And yet we all know, run! Go that way! When everybody's going that way, you better go that way. Get out of there. Something bad is coming. Something bad's coming, and people know it. Y'all know it in your heart and your soul, and yet you're still trying to cling on to the shiny things where you are. People say things like, well, I can't get a job out in the boonies, and I've got responsibilities for my family. You're talking about responsibility as a man, Pastor Joe. Because no one out here in the boonies has a job. No one out here has a family that they're supporting. Everybody out here is on EBT. Wrong. It's just excuses people make. They don't want to try. They're afraid to make the leap. Our society is going to change. I think it's going to change because there's only so many iterations. There's all these New Agers who want this big enlightened dawn of Aquarius kind of thing, where everybody's kind of like unisex and hive mind, and it's all good, man. That ain't gonna happen. I think what's gonna happen, I call it the leveling, is a return to a tribal society. There will be the rise of tribes. Why? Because tribes work. And you're going to see all kinds of things. You would do yourself some good to do some research on tribes from all over the world. They all have a lot of things in common. And we're like, oh, well, we're not for that. We're for the rule of law and democracy and dun 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 dun. Your rule of law doesn't really work now. You know that, right? It's a facade. It's a matrix also. We're the thin blue line keeping the heathens away from the good people. It really doesn't work that well. And I don't want to go there right now. But there are people who are way outside of the system. And it doesn't apply to them. And they know it. And they exercise power viciously. And so, people hoping for this enlightened age, it's not going to happen. I think it's going to get more real. And I did a series of videos on YouTube, what the poor can expect, what women can expect, yada, yada, yada. I believe that stuff to be true. The world is changing. People are starting to discover things about their religion. People are starting to discover things about personal relationships. I would just tell you this. Question what you think you know and back it up for yourself. Don't go and say, well, Pastor Joe said this, so I'm just going to parrot that. No, go learn, know, find out for yourself. I love it when people say, oh, it says somewhere in the Bible that they're usually one, wrong about how they quote it, or two, that it's even in the Word. It says in the Bible that God helps those that help themselves. No, it doesn't. That is, however, a biblical principle, but it doesn't say that. Go back and find out for yourself. What's your base? And here's what I'll finish on. There's this new wave that's coming. It's here. And you're going to have to run with that wave if you want to live. Or you're going to get rolled over by the wave. You'll just get crushed by it. OODA loop times 10. Boom! You're going to get eaten by the wave. And so there are people, many people in this nation that don't have a base. My base is the Father, right? I mean, that's clear. And I try to base my big decisions on Him and on what He would want. But I get it. Not everybody's into that, or other people have a different interpretation of how that works, right? But most people, most Americans, most Europeans, their core, the core of them as a person, is not very strong. It's this consumerist, seeking entertainment, bread and circuses, excitement, constant input kind of personality. That's their core. And when they realize, wow, this wave's coming, we got to run with the wave, they're going to make morally bad decisions. Well, we just have to do this. We just have to kill and eat people if we want to survive. Well, I survived, It's no sense looking back to the way it was when we didn't eat people. Well, when you're on a surfboard, you can steer it a little bit. You can go this way, you can go that way, you can go straight. You got to have a core. You got to have something greater than yourself that makes up yourself if you're going to do the right thing as this world continues to go madly wrong around you. Saw a video, you probably saw it, of the little girl who got pulled into the water by the sea lion. Her parents were freaking idiots. But you know what? That Chinese guy did not hesitate to jump in and grab that little girl from the sea lion. He made a good decision, right? That was a morally strong decision. I'm a man. That's a little girl. She is in peril. I'm going to save her. He didn't think very long. He's in the water. And he probably did save her. What kind of decisions are you going to make in the event? I fear that most people are going to make bad decisions. And in the midst of their bad decisions, some of them are going to run into me. That won't work out so well for them. But not you. You're going to make the right decisions. I'm going to end on a happy note with some coffee. I appreciate y'all. Try to see the big picture. You'll get lasered in on something. Back up, look at the big picture, and figure out what you can do about it to best place you and yours to survive and thrive what's coming. All right, I'll see you out there.